We're doing an exciting upgrade to our hitch today. Well, we have the Continuum weight distribution hitch by B&W. We are really excited to get this unboxed and installed, so let's get started. In this box, we have the head unit, as well as the receiver lock that they send you. And then in this box, we have all the hardware. There's more hardware. And then this is the load bar assembly. Really nice looking. And then this is the hydraulic pump and the cylinder in this box. Well, the first thing that you have to do when you install the Continuum weight distribution hitch is you have to make sure your RV is completely level front to back. Now, I've already done that and we are completely level. The next step is going to be taking a measurement of your height of your coupler on your RV. So we're going to get a measurement here and we're going to document what that is. Now, once you get the height of the coupler, you want to install the head unit on your truck and you want to take a measurement of the top of the ball. What you want for the Continuum hitch is the top of your ball needs to be 1 to 2 inches higher than your coupler. So that's why those two measurements are important. So the next step is going to be to take a measurement of the height of the ball. And like I said, you want 1 to 2 inches higher than your coupler height. So we need to come up quite a bit. Now, when they ship the head unit to you, it's shipped in the down position. What I mean by this is your shank is able to be flipped over and turned into the up position. So we'll do that now because we're going to need it higher and we're already in the top position. It's really easy. You just remove your pins and you can take the head unit right off. It's this easy. And your head unit comes off. And then you flip this into the rise position. We're going to go ahead and secure it on the truck now with the B&W receiver lock. So now I can put the head unit back on here, take another measurement. This gives us that much more height to make adjustments as needed. So right there, I'm perfectly even with our coupler height. So I need to go up one more. Before I put the pins back in, I'll just get a quick measurement just to make sure. So right here, I'm at 27.5 and the coupler was at 26. So I'm definitely between 1 and 2 inches higher. Your next step is going to be to put your pins back in. Now, it's really important that when you put these pins in, that when you flip these over, your ring needs to be touching the metal shaft. It is possible to put them in backwards. And if you do, there's a gap there and they could fall out or your hitch could come loose and you could lose your RV. So it's really important that you put these pins in correctly. See how it's touching there? Your next step is going to be to install your hydraulic pump and the cylinder. However, before you get into that, you need to mark on your frame where your propane tank cover sits. And that's important, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So we're going to go ahead and make some marks on here. Then we're going to remove our propane tank cover. I'll go ahead and remove the propane bottles and then we'll go on to the next step. So your next step, like I said, is going to be installing the hydraulic pump and the cylinder. You need to make sure that we have at least 2 inches of clearance between the propane tank tray and the front of the coupler, which we do. We have 6 inches here. And then you're going to install your hydraulic pump bracket 4 inches back from the marks you made on your frame here from the cover. So at least 4 inches back is right here. So the mounting hardware that B&W provides is designed for all different sizes of frames, all the way from 4-inch frames to 7-inch frames. So you have to use the appropriate hole that fits your frame. We have a 6-inch frame, so we will use the appropriate hole. Now you also want to make sure that you have plenty of clearance from any hoses or wiring that is around your frame. You don't want to pinch any of that. So we'll go ahead and get one of the nuts started on here. I'm just going to finger tighten it right now just to hold the bracket on. And then we'll use the bottom bolt and do the same. Okay, so we want to take a measurement from our tank cover, propane tank cover marks to the front, and you need 4 inches of clearance, and right here we're at 3.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and move it, the bracket up here, and see if that gives us the clearance that we need. Once we've done this, we also need to test fit the pump and make sure that the handle has enough clearance to clear the front of the RV while it's mounted on here. So there's a couple things that you have to do to test fit this. So we just test fitted the pump in here, just held it up by hand to make sure we had enough clearance for the handle, and we do. We have a couple of inches here. So this is where I'm going to mount the pump. Okay, so we got the bracket where we want it. Now it's really important, a couple things, that it's really straight to the frame itself at a 90 degree. Also, it's really important that it's flush to the frame on both sides of the hardware. So you don't want to over tighten the top bolt and have less threads on the bottom bolt or vice versa. You want to make sure to tighten them evenly. So get them nice and tight by hand, and then you can torque them down. Now, you do want to do 40 foot-pounds of torque, and also I went ahead and spun these bolts around so the nuts are on the outside so I could get my torque wrench on it instead of trying to fight this battery box. Now it's time to mount the hydraulic pump. Now the hose is designed, the gap here is designed to slide right around this frame of this bracket. And there's 2 mounting holes in the back and there's 1 on the bottom. Just get these started hand tight. So now you're going to tighten these 3 bolts down to 40 foot-pounds. Now we're going to install the hydraulic cylinder, and if you notice, the pin only fits one side of your bracket here, so you have to make sure you install that the correct way. So this is going to sit right here. Now this is where your pencil marks for your propane tanks come into play, because you want to give enough room, but you want your 2-inch gap here, which we have enough room right where it is. So this is kind of difficult to route your hose and get your bracket up through here, your cylinder up through here, but it's definitely doable. So like I said, it only goes in one way, that pin does, just like that. And then you put your retainer clip inside, like so. So before we bolt the bracket down, I just want to make sure that we have at least 2 inches of clearance, and we do. And we are inside of our pencil lines for our propane bottle covers. Next thing we're going to do is drop our bolts. And depending on the size of frame you have, it's going to determine whether you mount them in this position or in this position. With a 6 and 7 inch frame, you need to mount them in this position. We'll just get these started finger tight. And we'll jump over to the other side and do the same thing. The last measurements you want to take is you just want to make sure this is centered as best as possible, as close to center as you can get it. 1 3/8, pretty close. So that's really close to dead center. Now I'll snug these up and torque those to 40 foot-pounds. So we need to connect our hose to the hydraulic pump by removing the temporary plug, and then you push this in all the way until it seats. And now it is connected. Now I'm going to hook up the truck and get the load bar assembly installed. So next step is hooking up the truck. All right, so before I put any weight on the hitch at all, you want to grease up everything really well. And then I'll just wipe all that off. So at this point, you want to lift your tongue jack tube all the way up. You don't want it touching at all. You want the full weight of the RV on the hitch. Now, one other thing that you're going to need to do is potentially remove the foot off of the tube because it's not going to fit over your load bars. So at this point, I'm going to take this foot off and I'm going to remove these out of the way. So ideally, you want the truck as straight as you can get it to the RV. Unfortunately, in the position we're in right here, we didn't have room to be completely straight. But our next step is going to be to drop our safety chains between the load bar assembly. And then we want to pull this pin out. And we want to mount the hydraulic cylinder into the second hole. And then make sure you put your cotter pin back in. Same thing with this one, you have to install it correctly or it will have the ability to fall out. Just like that. Now you want to make sure that your valve is open because we're going to stand on both sides of the load bars and we're going to push them down. Now we can connect the load bar. And just like that, we are connected. So the last step is going to be to install the fork holder onto the tube of your tongue jack. And what that does is it allows you, when you get to the campground, to disconnect from your truck and you set this right on the holder. And that way it's not sitting down on the ground or in the dirt. You want to install this about 1 inch above the foot, the top of the foot here. And you torque this to 30 foot-pounds. Now that we have the propane tanks installed and the covers back on, we want to take our second measurements of our wheel wells of the truck, and we want to get to our 50% of the measurements. So if your measurement was, let's say 40 from ground to the top of the wheel well, and now that you've attached the RV, you're down to 38, you want to get between 50% of 38 and 40. That's the goal with using the continuum weight distribution hitch. So we have the initial measurements. Now I'm going to take some measurements after I put a little bit of pressure in the hydraulic system. And I close the valve. And you can see that the hitch is coming up. So right there is 1,000 PSI. I'm going to take a quick measurement and see where we're at. Well, that completes the install for the Continuum Weight Distribution Hitch by B&W. We want to thank B&W for sponsoring this video. Now we're ready to hit the road. Well, first impressions, I don't feel the porpoising that I felt with our other weight distribution hitch. Normally when Laurie and I first get in the truck to leave for a trip, after we've been stationary for a week or two or a month, we can both really tell the difference. And we're like, whoa, you know, you can really feel that porpoising, and kind of, this ride is much smoother so far. I can't wait to take it out on a highway and tow with it for a while and have a lot more information to gather on it. But first impressions, I think, well, not, I don't think, I know we both can tell a difference.